Podcasting just wouldn't be podcasting without the RSS feed. But is this flat text file powerful enough to power podcasting in the future? Hello and welcome to another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. All this week I'm doing a 10-part miniseries, this week and next week, a 10-part miniseries on the future of podcasting, which originally appeared in the Podcast Business Journal print edition, inaugural print edition. This week is number 3. It's about RSS feeds. And I'm going to tell you the future, at least I think, the future as I see it for RSS feeds. Now, don't worry too much if you are already glazing eyes over on the technicalities. I'm not going to get technical on this. Is not a technical show. This is a why-to show much more than it is a how-to show, and I'm going to respect that. But as a working podcaster, you know that you have a thing called an RSS feed. It is a text file because you can click it and read it. It's gobbledygook. It's XML. So it's got a bunch of other stuff that you won't recognize. But if you look at it, it's not super complicated. It's not like you're reading code. You're not. You're reading a flat text file with descriptors wrapped around it. Not that complicated. This is where your title goes. It's where your artwork goes. It's how podcatchers know to download your episodes because there's a link to your MP3 files. It's basically the lifeblood. And podcasting started because of RSS feed, because of specifically RSS 2.0, a spec upgrade, if you will, to the old RSS 0.92, I think was the standard. And I know I'm getting technical, but relax. Give me a second to get through it. You'll be okay. Dave Weiner added an enclosure tag, which basically puts a link to an MP3 file inside of podcasting. That's it. That's all podcasting is. There's nothing more magical or complicated to that. It's a change to an RSS feed so that it could contain a link to an MP3 file that programs could read so that they could then download the audio file. Simple, easy, elegant. And every time you update your podcast, when you put a new episode out, your RSS feed contains that episode. Great. Wonderful. Hooray. If it wasn't for RSS, we wouldn't have podcasting. And there are many of my friends in the podcasting world who still say that if a show is not distributed with an RSS feed, it's not a podcast. Okay, you can have that argument. I think the reality is that the people out there are showing that's wrong because there's a lot of people who consume podcasts every single day that never encounter an RSS feed, and where they got the media file didn't go from an RSS feed. Case in point, every time somebody listens to you on YouTube, which they do a lot, does not require an RSS feed. Every single time somebody listens to you from a video you posted on Facebook, also not an RSS feed. Yet those people would say that they are consuming your podcast. But this isn't a discussion about what podcasting is and what podcasting isn't. This is about the future of podcasting and where RSS feeds fit in the future. Now, in my article for the Podcast Business Journal, I said RSS feeds aren't going to die. That's true. RSS feeds are not going to die. They will, however, see their importance diminished. But, there's a giant but on the end of that. But, that doesn't mean you can afford to be lazy with your RSS feed. When I say it's going to diminish in importance, what I mean is that over time, new technologies come around. Now, we might see the RSS 2.0 spec upgraded to the RSS 3.0 spec with a lot of other information that's not currently passed along in the RSS feed added. That's a possibility. We could do that. Or, what I think is every bit as likely, is that some new technology will come along. Maybe JSON. Maybe something else. I don't know what it looks like. The technology doesn't really matter. But there are other platforms. Let me change the way I say that. There are things we're just not getting out of the RSS feed. It does a good job. It does exactly what it was designed to do. But there's a lot it can't do in its current state. So I think somebody will come along and do an upgrade to that one. Or, as I said, there will be other competing flavors, if you will, of ways to distribute content that won't just be with an RSS feed. See, the RSS feed is vulnerable for a couple of reasons. One is it's not complete. Sure, titles, descriptions, great. It's got all that information, artwork, but there's more to it than that. Incomplete is one of them. The second thing is it's, for as robust as it is, it's awfully fragile. It is really, here's how fragile it is. If you're hosted at one of the primary hosting companies, and there are a handful of them, the people who run these podcast hosting companies their best practice that they suggest all podcasters do is when you publish a new episode of your podcast, go check your RSS feed and make sure it's still valid. What? Why? Why would the act of posting an episode cause an RSS feed to be invalid? Especially, I can see how it would be invalid if you posted it by hand, if you hand edited an RSS feed. But those same hosting companies are the ones that generate the RSS feed. They're the ones that have the fields that they ask us podcasters to fill out as we're putting together our episode for publishing. If there's a chance we could put something in one of those fields to make our RSS feed invalid, shouldn't they trap that and fix it? And even if they can't, shouldn't they do a quick scan to make sure that your feed is valid? I mean, I find it really hard to believe that you could write a blog post. Just by writing a blog post, putting text into the fields in WordPress or Squarespace or whatever you're using, I find it hard to believe that if you put text in there and it broke your website, again, text, not code, not changing templates. If you just typed in text and it somehow broke your website, you'd be pissed. You'd be terribly pissed about that. So I think there's some validation that they're not doing. And I think maybe the reason they're not doing it is because they also wonder about the future of RSS feeds. Why put the time, energy, and effort into doing that? I don't know. That's a possibility. I can tell you that for now, for foreseeable future, we need RSS feeds, complete RSS feeds. I fully expect that there will be new namespaces. Apple's got a namespace, so we can put episode numbers and season numbers and stuff like that. I expect new namespaces coming down the pipe. But I also wouldn't be surprised if sometime in the future, probably the near future, within the next 15 years or so, somebody's going to come along with an opportunity to make it better. A better way to distribute files for your podcast than this flat RSS file. JSON? Sure. API calls? Whatever. More deeper integration with hosting platforms and distribution points? Possibly. We don't know what it looks like. But we know it's coming. Or I know it's coming. Or I think it's coming. Because change is the way that things happen. And, take a look at the life of flat files. They don't really stay around for a long time. Sure, they're still around in banking and a bunch of other places that still use them, but that's an industry that it's hard to change. I'm not so sure it would be that tough for us to change. I think it's a matter of willingness. Now, what that means for you, the working podcaster, is probably nothing at this point because you just need to make sure that your RSS feed is valid, which is dumb, and I'm sad you have to do that. But also, keep your eyes peeled and experiment with some of these new opportunities that are coming out. You're already experimenting with them right now, chances are, but I think we'll see more. So don't be afraid and don't be a slave to the RSS feed. It's not going to die, but it might be replaced at some point in the future. We shall see. Hey, 3 things before I go, as you probably have known from listening to some of these episodes before. But if you're new, and maybe you don't know that, flick.group/podcast pontifications. There'll be a link in the episode details, or you can join a conversation and tell me that I'm wrong, or I'm right, whatever. I'm good with that. You can also buy me a coffee to show the support and love for the show. buymeacoffee.com/evoterra. I'd love it if you'd make it a regular, recurring donation as well. And then finally, if you're a business and you're going, RSS feeds, what are these all about for podcasting? Hey, get in touch, because I help businesses all over the world keep their podcast running. evo@podcastlaunch.pro. Go to podcastlaunch.pro to see a list of all the services that I offer. I shall be back on Thursday with yet another Podcast Pontifications. Cheers.